Joining us now, we have Independent Senator Angus King of Maine. He is on the Armed Services and Intelligence Committees. I wanted to talk to you first about this move to dispense with some relief funds for COVID. What do you think about that? And what do you think about this, especially as we see this move away from the pandemic, but at the same time, maybe some need for them?
Well, John just mentioned 400 people a day is still a lot of people. If that were a terrorist attack, we'd be turning ourselves upside down to do something about it. And I think what the president meant, and I don't want to interpret for him, but the massive sort of shutdowns and masks and all of that, we're moving beyond that. But why we need additional funds is to keep the door shut. It's for therapeutics and vaccines. The reason we've gotten where we are is vaccination. The statistics are overwhelming. 80–90% of the people who are hospitalized are unvaccinated. So we do need additional funds to keep it down, to keep it from coming back, particularly the new variants.
You see this, I want to talk to you now about immigration. You see this shift that's really a big shift of where migrants are coming from. Less Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, 175% increase from Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. What is causing this shift in the nations of where migrants are coming from?
Well, in the first place, you're right. This is a dramatic change because there's been three phases. The first phase was Mexico, where everybody thought about Mexican immigrants coming to the border, trying to cross the border. Then it was the three Central American countries, the so-called triangle down there, and that's where they were coming from. Now, Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua are mostly fleeing oppressive communist regimes. That the regimes have lack of control, no economic opportunity, a lot of corruption. So this is a new wave, as you say. It's sort of reverse what we've had in the last few years, and it points up the fact that we've really got to do something about trying to cut this off at the source. Now, here's the problem. You send aid and try to support those countries that are struggling to be not such dangerous places that make people want to flee. But with the corruption, you don't know that the money ever gets where it belongs, where it should be, in order to help people, help them stay where they are instead of feeling they have to come here.
What are you hearing from your Republican colleagues? Because there are some unique challenges when you're talking about people fleeing from communist regimes.
Well, we have a law that goes back years and years and years, I'm not sure, probably into the 60s, that if you get to this country from Cuba, which was, of course, Castro and the communists, you put your foot on American soil, you're in. And I can't remember, it's called 1 foot, wet foot, or wet foot, dry foot, something like that. So I'm interested to see whether those who advocated for immediate entrance for people from Cuba will also say the same for Nicaragua and Venezuela, because the issue is the same. These people are fleeing communism. But Brianna, there's a larger issue here. We need to deal with the border, but the problem is the debate about immigration has become so emotional and so political. We're forgetting about legal immigration and the need we have in this country for workers at all levels, PhDs to manual labor. And I had a CEO in my office last week who made a speech, at the graduation speech at an engineering school. He said 80–90% of the graduates were from foreign countries. None of them can stay here. These are people we need. We need to figure out how to do legal immigration safely while at the same time dealing with security at the border. I think that can be done, and I can tell you that there's some sort of quiet discussions going on in the Senate to try to find a way forward.
That you are a part of, I assume.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, it is a staggering brain drain, for sure. As we are looking at Ukraine, trying to hold the land that it has been able to clear, that it has taken back from Russia. Right now, the U.S. is providing weapons for missiles for the HIMARS systems that go about 50 miles. Ukraine would obviously like them to go further, but going 200 miles, the U.S. says no. 50 miles, yes. What would reach that threshold for you of saying yes to a weapon that would go 200 miles?
Well, the reason the administration, I think, is reluctant, we had a briefing on this just yesterday, is there are a number of reasons, some of which I can share with you, some I can't. But the reason is it would clearly be an escalation. It would clearly invite Putin to take further escalatory steps. I think in answer to your question, what would it take for me to support those additional weapons would be if Putin escalates. And here's the great danger, Brianna. Here's the paradox of the situation we're in right now is the better the Ukrainians do, the more dangerous Putin becomes, the more he's backed into a corner. And he's getting pressure in Russia, if you read the press, not from people who say, let's get this over with, let's get out. He's getting pressure from people saying, do more. And his pattern in Aleppo, in Syria, in Grozny, in Chechnya is bomb the crap out of them. Civilians, carpet bomb. And that's what I'm worried about. I think the most likely next step is for Putin to step up attacks on civilian infrastructure. And then we're going to have to think about how we and the Ukrainians respond.
Before I let you go, I want to talk to you about something that obviously Maine is very well known for, and that is lobster. Because lobster, which is on menus across the country, has been put on the Seafood Watch monitoring program's list as red, which is to say avoid while eating. And I know that you're taking issue with that. What are you saying in response to that?
Well, let me give you, I'll start with two numbers, 0 and 0. 0 evidence that Maine lobster gear is of danger to right whales, and 0 historic record of right whales ever dying as a result of entanglement in Maine lobster gear.
Why are they saying this then?
Well, I don't know. They're on a mission. And the problem is, Brianna, they're putting thousands of people out of business, or they're trying to. This is like the death sentence commercially. They're saying, don't buy Maine lobsters. And there's no evidence. The science just isn't there. Plus, the Maine lobstermen, I don't want to say industry because it's really 5,000 sole proprietors with boats and families. They've done incredible work over the past 15 years to avoid even the slightest risk. Weak links in ropes, less rope in the water, weaker ropes, all of those marked gear, all of those things. And this outfit in California doesn't count that. They say, well, that hasn't been proved to be effective. Never mind that what they're claiming, that it's a danger to right whales, that hasn't been proved either. And what really bothers me is it's guilty until proven innocent. And people's livelihoods, whole communities up and down the Maine coast are at stake. It's an utterly irresponsible action by a self-appointed judge, jury, and executioner. And we're trying to persuade them to look at the data, at the science, and say, no, there's not enough evidence here to convict all of these thousands of good people in Maine.
Well, Senator, we appreciate your time on a myriad of topics this morning.
We did cover a little.
We sure did. Thank you for coming in.
Great to be here, Brianna.